So you ever wondered what you'll be remembered for when you go ahead and kick the bucket? Believe it or not, astrology has an answer. And so, friends, before I go ahead and go to bed, we are going to be talking about the 12th house. We already know that the 12th house is our subconscious. It's where divine meets physical, our soul. But it can also be where we find isolation and just divinely creative gifts as well. But it can also be the house that tells you a lot about what you're remembered for when you die. So this is my chart, and we are going to look at my 12th house. My 12th house is Sagittarius. Let's start there. So I'll be known for Sagittarius-like things, but what does that mean? Essentially, what it means is a couple different things. It could mean that I'm remembered for being very generous. It could mean that I am remembered for being open-minded or being a constant seeker of understanding and truth. It could honestly also be me being remembered for my very different belief systems that are a bit more mystical and alternative. But that's a lot of stuff to pull on. And if we wanted to narrow it down a little bit, what we can do is look at what other house is Jupiter, the ruler of my 12th house, going to be ruling over. It's going to be ruling over the third house, which is Pisces. In this case, because Jupiter is the traditional ruler of Pisces. And then we can keep on going from there and look at where Jupiter is at. Jupiter is up here in Virgo in the 9th house, and it's opposing my sun. So what we can essentially say, even if we're taking out that opposition to my sun, is that I was somebody that was constantly reinventing what they were learning and constantly reinventing their belief system. So we can package that up with a couple bullet points. Sagittarius in the 12th is going to automatically be somebody that is more optimistic or almost like very wanderlusty. I don't know, what's the best word to use for that. But also, Jupiter being the ruler of my third and being situated in my 9th house in Virgo can be somebody that just loves to learn, that is constantly changing what they're learning, and is not only just learning it to be learning it, they're learning it to master it and understand it. Now, let's do another example, but we're going to look at a celebrity chart. Okay, so this is the icon, Prince's chart. We are actually going to be shifting this chart a little bit because it's using the Placidus house system. So if we were using the whole sign system, which is what I'm using for this video, Libra would be his 12th house. So what can we say that Prince would be remembered for since he has Libra as his 12th house? I'm going to say this, and nobody come at me in the comments, but I don't actually know that much about Prince. My mom loves Prince, but I actually don't know that much about him, so that makes this chart perfect. So what makes his chart interesting is that he has Jupiter in Libra in his 12th house. But let's start off with Libra. Automatically, there would be some sort of remembrance that had to do with his relationships, or that had to do with something very Libra-like, like fashion, or we could even say, since it's in the 12th house, like creative writing, since Libra is going to be an air sign, and so it's like communication and it's very artsy, and so it can be like songwriting, especially since Jupiter is there. But since Jupiter is there, we're also going to look at what houses does Jupiter rule over. And Jupiter is actually going to be the ruler of his 2nd house, which in whole sign is going to be his 2nd house, Sagittarius, but Saturn is there. So that makes me kind of go back to the 12th house and say that his relationships were very selective, and that's going to be something that he's remembered for, is that he was very picky about who he actually partnered with. But even more so, Saturn is structure, and it can be a lot about, when we're talking about Jupiter being in Libra in the 12th house, where we possibly don't have a lot of relationships going on, or we're very selective about relationships in Prince's case. It could be a lot about his income, a lot of his income coming from not only just being artistic on his own, because let's also look at where Venus is. Venus is in the 7th in Taurus at home in his home sign in Taurus, and so automatically he's wildly creative, and so that is something that he is very much known for. It's in the house of relationships, which is the 7th house, and so it can be a lot about being very selective and picky about who he collabs with, or just doing it in a very unorthodox way, but it's on his terms, because again, we've got Saturn in the 12th because it's being hooked to that Jupiter in the 12th, and Saturn is going to be in a Jupiter ruled house. We also see Jupiter ruling over his 5th, which is Pisces, which can really speak to essentially him not only creating his own career, creative career on his own terms, but also setting it up for other people, setting up other people's careers, creative careers on his terms. And so the collaboration isn't necessarily with people. It's more with like the creative space that he is creating in, since the second house is your resources. And yes, I did double check this because I found out that Prince actually did a lot of songwriting, not only just for himself, but for other people that helped launch their own career. And then, of course, to wrap all this up, like I said, we have Libra that's very fashionable. One of the biggest things that Prince was known for was his fashion sense. But also Saturn in the 2nd in Sagittarius, tied to his Venus houses, which are going to be the 12th and the 7th house, can put a strain on resources through relationships, hence the being very picky or very selective about who he partners with. And I think a great example of this, because Saturn can, in the 2nd house, can also be like almost like a late bloomer when it comes to resources, or really growing into how you make money and blow up. And so I think the best example of this is when he was going through that issue. And this is like the only fact that I already knew about Prince prior to this video, is that he went through a big issue with a recording company where they copyrighted his name and he had to change his name to the symbol. But I don't know, I think this is pretty fascinating. Let me know what you guys think, and what is your 12th house? Let me know. Do you have any planets there? Other than that, I will talk to you guys in the next one. Have a great night. I'm going to bed. Bye.